Are you guys ready for me in the back? Ready to go? All right. Thank you all for coming. I don't think I've ever created a fire hazard before, so this is a first for me. Thank you all for coming out to my talk. I have a question for you to begin with. Does anybody here believe in bring your own device? Because I've got something to say about it. And it goes something like this. Oh, and also you have to look at my shoes because I bought them today, and James said, no one can see your shoes, Georgia, so look at my shoes. Also, at about 35 minutes after, the next talk in track 2 says they're going to make a lot of noise. So when that happens, when it's over, I'm going to turn the microphone on you guys, and you're going to scream for me, okay? All right. Woo! Okay, let's do some talk. Oh, I'm almost out of alcohol. What am I going to do? Unfortunately, they don't let you get off stage for alcohol breaks. Anyhow, we're going to talk about a little tool I wrote called the Smartphone Pentest Framework, and I told everybody I was going to get on my knees and confess, but I realized you can't see me if I do that. Only the front row will be able to see me. But I would like to confess a certain sin. I am now part of the problem. I have introduced some bad coding practices into the world, just like everybody else. So I am very sorry, and for all the people who think I'm a fraud now, okay, I suck, but I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to do better, and you guys still love me, right? Yeah. Woo! Okay, as long as you guys still love me, because if Derbycon still loves me, I'm still doing all right. All right, so this is a disclaimer that says, basically, this was a DARPA Cyber Fast Track project, and they don't necessarily endorse my views about things like alcohol and footwear. So, generally speaking, the U.S. government doesn't necessarily endorse my views. They just pay for them. Speaking of which, love, love, love to the DARPA Cyber Fast Track program. If you guys have an idea for research and you just kind of can't get it off the ground or think, I have too much work to do at my day job, check this thing out. DARPA Cyber Fast Track. I know they were here giving a keynote yesterday, and unfortunately I was on a plane coming all the way from Brussels to see you, so I didn't get to do it. But they have a really awesome program, and they are accepting proposals until next August, and you should really check it out. They give you money, and you do what you want, and before that, I was a junior pen tester at a company that had the audacity to say to me when I told them I was quitting, who do you think you are, H.D. Moore? You'll be back in 6 months. I'm not back. I'm not H.D. Moore either, but I'm me, and my footwear is better. So now I'm the CEO of my own company, all thanks to DARPA, so you should really check it out. Oh, hey, DARPA. They're here. All right, so a little embarrassment there. Smartphones in the workplace. So we all said how we feel about bring your own device. Smartphones in the workplace have a little bit of a problem. One of those problems we don't really like in information security. So they attach to our boxes, but they have another problem going on. It's this access point. It's the mobile network. You might say that smartphones in general are really just a device with an out-of-band communication channel. You know how much we like that, right? Yes, something we can't monitor at all and have no idea what's going on. We love that as security professionals. So everything I see from your work servers, I could also be sending out to the mobile network. I do this all the time. It's fun. And there's no way for you to monitor this. We don't like that. So let's think about some of the things your smartphones are doing. Anybody have their work email on their smartphone? They're at Derbycon. They're pretending they're at work. Hands up, I know there's more of you. What about accessing data? Can anybody VPN into work and then suddenly be a node on the network? Yes. Oh, so I've popped your phone and then you VPN into work and now I'm an inside node on your network. Awesome. I've also seen a couple of them that actually generate one-time passwords to attach to the company network. So not only can I get on your network, but I can generate the passwords to do it myself on my own computer. So save me the trouble of logging back into via SSH to your phone. Why not? So let's talk about some of those problems with smartphones. The big one this year, apps. We all know this. All the apps are malicious. Everybody's app in the world is malicious. It takes about 10 lines of code to write a malicious app. It isn't even hard. Me, the bad coder that I am, have managed to write many of them and even get them on the Android marketplace. I'm not as cool as Charlie Miller, though, so I haven't been on the iPhone market yet. But this happens on all platforms, some easier than others. And so if your employees at work will install a malicious Angry Birds add-on or some other app, we all do it. I mean, the first thing I did when I got my new phone, download all the apps I have to have. I was doing that USSD attack that came out last week and wiped out my phone. And it's like, oh God, how am I gonna live without Twitter? I mean, really, how can you live without Twitter? Anybody here can live without Twitter? No hands. Oh, a couple hands. They can live without Twitter. You guys are obviously not InfoSec professionals. So if you're installing apps and you're allowing your employees to install whatever apps that they like, which if you're not, they're going to come into your office and tar and feather you if you say you can't download these apps. What is that data? What's happening with your data? So I have a malicious app. I steal your data. We've done this in talks before. It's not exciting, but it could be happening to every employee you have. And there's not really much we can do about it with Bring Your Own Device. And then there's always our favorite in information security, software bugs. I have now introduced software bugs myself, so I belong on this slide. But our browsers have bugs, our apps have bugs, our kernels have bugs, our smartphone Pentest frameworks have bugs. Everything has bugs. So if I can get you to browse to a malicious web page, I could perhaps take over your phone. Malicious people can take over your phone, so why are we not pen testing these devices, I say? So I can gain access to your data this way. Every time a jailbreak comes out, and let's face it, iOS 6 hasn't been out very long, and it's already jailbroken. Every version of Android is jailbroken. Every version of iOS is jailbroken. BlackBerry isn't jailbroken for one simple reason that I learned in my Cyber Fast Track project. Writing code for BlackBerry really sucks. I mean, seriously, you have to go out, and it's like, even to make an internet connection, a basic, simple botnet exercises, we have to check if we're on the Wi-Fi, we have to check if we're on 2G, on 3G, and it's like, this is bad, bad, bad for app developers. So your BlackBerries are safe just because the malware guys have better things to do than deal with your stupid platform. But I'm sure it has bugs too, but we would just rather attack things that make sense. And then, the bug that will never, ever be patched. Social engineering. See, I thought this was all made up until I started doing phishing attacks. And then I'm like, I'm a fisher, please send me your credentials. And then everybody does. And I realize that social engineering works and will probably always work, unfortunately. But even if you have a company that if I send out a phishing attack and nobody responds to it, I mean, hands up. Has anybody ever done that? You got 0% success rate on a phishing attack. Be honest. All right, I don't see any hands. So that's email. We're doing really good user training on the email then. No one's responding to this. Nobody's clicking on the link. Nobody's giving their credentials. What if I send a text message? You know you've seen it. I was really excited about this because I want a Target gift card. I really do. So I get this text message one day. I wake up in the morning and it says, I actually got one on stage once, so they must be watching me, knowing when I'm most vulnerable. Customer number 4183, you are the winner of a $1,000 Best Buy gift card. I could buy a TV with that, man. So get your prize today at tinyurl.com something, 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 something. Wouldn't it be nice if this was true? I would love to get a Best Buy gift card. It's like when you go in your spam folder and you see all those people wanting to give you money, you could just find the one person who really does want to give you $1 million. You'd be set, right? You wouldn't have to do this rat race of information security anymore. You'd be rich. You could give Johnny Long a bunch of money and be happy. But alas, so how many of your users would get popped by that? If they're still answering the emails, I can assure you they're going to answer that. Because your security awareness program, so to speak, I don't think anybody is covering SMS just yet. What if I sent them an email or an SMS rather that said, hey, this is a really awesome app. You should download it. Oh, that makes it even easier. Now I'm really on their phone. But you might say, okay, people aren't going to do this. But what if it came from one of your friends? What if you got an SMS from Dave Kennedy, and then you were really excited because Dave Kennedy knows you exist now? And see, I even made myself laugh that time. And so you get this text message from Dave Kennedy, and it says, download this app, or here's the pictures from Derbycon. Thanks so much for coming. Who wouldn't click on that? I know I would. We had an attack come out. It was in August. It's now in the framework. We're going to try and demo it if we have time. But has anybody had any cell service problems here? Cell service problems? Yes. Cell service is not good here. I can't imagine why. So I could pretend to be Dave Kennedy using the framework and send you a text message and then pop myself and hopefully all of you. And sometimes our users like to jailbreak their phones. I can't imagine why. It couldn't be because Apple tries and make them not do the things that they like. Couldn't be that we spend all this money on devices and then they say, you can't use it to do this. So of course we're going to jailbreak it. My phones are jailbroken. We're going to exploit one of them later, actually, and you can too. So when we jailbreak, though, we're giving some person out on the internet who probably has some weird handle at best express permission to exploit our devices. So if you download my jailbreak and I jailbreak your phone and then I add you to my botnet, have I even done anything illegal? You gave me permission to do this. I think that's a pretty legal gray area if there ever was one. So everybody in your environment who's jailbroken is potentially even that much faster exploited. So I guess the moral of the story is every smartphone in your environment, you must assume it's already exploited in one of these ways. But no one's pen testing them. So my question, if you will, my clients, occasionally they look me up on the internet. They're like, oh, you do smartphone things. What can you tell me about pen testing smartphones? Well, nothing. What can your competitors tell me about pen testing smartphones? Well, nothing. So you've done a pen test on my environment, and we have, 2,000 or so smartphones in the environment, but we've gotten a clean report. We've been through this pen test thing a time or two before. Everything's good. We got an A+. Are we actually secure? And my question, or my answer rather, was, I don't know. So how do we assess the threat of these smartphones to your environment? There's not really any way to say. So if you have a bunch of pop smartphones in your environment, our pen test is actually showing us nothing like what the actual threat is. And that is the state of our pen testing. So some things that are out there now. When I actually tell people about this, they're like, oh, you're so awesome, Georgia. You put Nmap on a smartphone. How nice for you. You're like the 15th person to do that. Yay. But that's not actually what this is. We're not actually pen testing from a smartphone. Well, we kind of are. We'll look at that. But this isn't bringing Nmap and Metasploit and Nessus and whatnot to the smartphone. Rather, we are assessing the security of the smartphones themselves. So there are some tools for that. My favorite, Z-Ante. So if you want to run Nmap from the beach and pretend to be at work, Z-Ante is the way to go, not SPF. Also, there's some smartphone tools live CDs. One of them is MobiSec. Another one came out called Sandoku. SPF is on Sandoku and is in the works of being on MobiSec. But MobiSec was another DARPA project. Hi, DARPA. I'm making them blush. There's my tester. I didn't know you were here. This is the coolest guy in the room, right here. He tested all my stuff. And there's also some stuff for testing apps. So your client writes some custom apps for the smartphones. They're all doing it. It's a cool thing to do. You want to make money, you have to have an app. And unfortunately, we don't have very good coding practice, but who am I to judge? But one way to test smartphone apps is to use the tool Mercury. Though we may incorporate at some point smartphone pen testing apps into SPF, Mercury is probably a better way to go for that. But what if we actually want to pen test the smartphone devices? Question mark, question mark. Intro, the smartphone Pentest framework. So this is the structure of the framework. It makes it look really complicated, like you need a bunch of servers and things. But that's not true at all. As we'll see here, we're running this all on my laptop. This being, of course, my new laptop and not my old DARPA laptop that was rather old and sometimes crashed in the middle of my talks. But nothing about that was anyone's fault but mine. Anyhow, so we have our client-controlled server, so that's where we're going to host SPF. We can, with our friends, all log into it via our laptops and work together. That said, we're not nearly as cool as something like Armitage in terms of doing things together. But we can also attach our smartphones to SPF. And why this is cool, I think, is because all the tools out there that allow you to do things like SMS spoofing and whatnot, what do they make you do? They make you go out to some sort of gateway on the internet that wants to make you pay 10 cents a message or whatnot. And that's all right, but I already pay all this money to have unlimited text messaging. Because if you've been to any of my talks, I'm absolutely obsessed with text messaging, especially exploiting it. So if I want to attack someone via the mobile modem, why should I have to pay someone else to do it for me? Why not just use the mobile modem in the device I already have? Yes, sounds good, I think. So we can actually attach either via USB modem, so we can attach a USB with a SIM card actually into the computer, or we can attach via an app the smartphone itself that we already have, and then we can use that mobile modem to run our attacks, the one we already pay for. But be sure, if you're going to use this at work, to tell your boss that you absolutely have to have whatever smartphone you want. In order to do this, it only works on the phone that you absolutely want to have. So they will buy it for you, but it will work on any of them. But you don't have to tell them that. And then our goal, of course, is our red phones in the corner that we, via the network or via the mobile modem, so via server or via smartphone, want to attack. Depending on the kind of attack we're running, we'll either run over the network or via the mobile modem. We'll look at both kinds of attacks in our demos. So here's a picture of the framework console. I think it looks a lot like the Social Engineer Toolkit. I can't imagine why. It might be because I'm a Dave Kennedy fangirl, but who isn't really? Let's not step on the microphone and fall over. There's also the framework GUI, which my mom wrote. So you can say bad things about SPF as much as you want, but you can't talk bad about the GUI, because my mom wrote that, and I will defend my mother to the grave. Here's another picture of the GUI. My mom is really awesome, but what you can blame her for, however, is the fact that it's written in Perl. Everybody complains, why didn't you write this in Python? Why didn't you write this in Ruby? Honestly, my only answer to this is, when I told my mom about this, she said, I can write that in Perl. And I didn't know how to write a web interface, so I was pretty much dependent on her writing this for me. So when she said Perl, I jumped. When she said write it in Perl, I said, how high would you like me to jump, basically. So that's why it's in Perl. So blame her for that. Everything else you can blame me for. All of the mistakes in it, that was me. And there's also our Framework smartphone app. If you use the Framework smartphone app, you will see why I needed my mother to write me a web interface so badly. Because the user interaction in this is pretty terrible, as we'll see. But this actually allows you not only to attach to the mobile modem, but to run some of the attacks straight from your smartphone, making it even more hard to tell whether we're actually writing that first one, pen testing from a smartphone, because indeed, in some ways, we are. There's another picture of it. Yay, screenshots. And another one. So we can actually run our attacks straight here from our phone. So things we can test for. We kind of have different areas we can test for. Remote vulnerabilities, just like in the PCs, we're going to see a lot less remote vulnerabilities, though there's some in there already, and there will certainly be more. For instance, we can test for your default SSH password on the iPhone. We can spoof iPhone reply to numbers for that attack that came out in August. There's also some client-side vulnerabilities. So if I can get you to surf to a web page, which is what we see in the PC world as well, if I can get you to surf to a web page and I can exploit you, that's very nice for me and the attackers, and hopefully soon your pen testers. I gotta watch the time. I don't want to be that guy, you know. That made him laugh a little bit. And then there's always our social engineering, which, you know, if your pen test isn't going so great, you can't really find anything, call up the boss and say, I'd like to do some social engineering, please. And everything will change because they all fall down. Same thing here with our smartphones. I figure if the bad guys are doing it, we should be doing it too. We're supposed to simulate the real threat. Let's simulate it. Let's start sending them some SMSs. And then once we're on the phone, via browser, via app, via them just downloading something for me, I say, hey, please download this malicious app for me. It will really screw up your phone. Gee, that works way too well. Then we can look for our local privilege escalation. So I get somebody to download an app for me, and I only have the privileges of that app. But if you're running Android, well, Android anything, honestly, and iOS, well, let's think. What iOS versions are jailbroken? All of them. So once I'm on your device, I can get root because I can just load my exploit code, and boom, we're done. I'm root. Game over. Now let's see what data we can get from your environment. So some examples. People say this is lame, that it's been around forever. So this came out in like 2009. So when the iPhone first came out, naturally we started jailbreaking it. And then we left our default password as the default because we didn't know it was there. But then some researcher figured it out and got really famous and got to be on the news because he realized that iPhone has a default password. It's still the default password, mind you. It's Alpine. So how many jailbroken devices do you have in your environment? Anybody know? Anybody can tell you how many jailbroken? Can anybody say that there's absolutely no jailbroken devices in the environment? Hands up, let's see it. One right there. So somebody says there's absolutely none, but the rest of you aren't so sure. I know I'm not so sure. MDM devices, so our mobile device management, they say we can check for you. But then I was at a conference and somebody raised their hand and said, I got past my MDM. It checked, I assume that's it. So it checks for bin SU on the Android to see if you have the super user. I changed it to bin SU1 and it didn't see it. Wow, we're doing really good with our security through obscurity. Woo! All right, I think it's time. Let's hear it, guys. And that is why I love Derbycon. I go to these other conferences and I'm like, shout for me, guys, yeah. And they're just like, nothing. Not here at Derbycon. No, you guys are awesome. That's why I love you. All right. So how many devices actually have the default password? And even if they change it, we have an option to use a word list. I don't know about you guys. I always name them after ex-boyfriends because it's really hard to type on that thing. So having a really strong password on the iPhone, forget it. So mine's probably in your word list. Just go through all the guys' names in InfoSec and you'll be able to find it. And then our client sides. You know, you remember when iOS 4.0 came out and they said, no one will ever be able to root this device. Never. And then like 2 days later, a 16-year-old did it. That was through a client side because they said, you can only run code that we, Apple, have signed. If this app is not signed by Apple, you will not run it. Thus making us say, well, we're certainly going to jailbreak it now. So then we think, well, let's go in through the browser. The browser can run unsigned code, so we have to render web pages. Because you know what happens if you can't render web pages? Can anybody guess? Everybody gets an Android. And nobody wants that at Apple. So, no matter what you do, functionality comes before security and your non-jailbreakable device falls down. So if I can get users to render my web page, which I can, and so can you, as you will learn in our demos, I may be able to exploit their browser and get on their device. Rocket science we're doing here. No one would ever think this would happen. So, your users are all up to date to the newest firmware. Well, if you've got Android users, forget it. You certainly don't. I went and bought a new Android, so I dropped my Android phone in the jacuzzi at DEF CON and left it there for like 2 hours, and it never came back to life. So I went to Best Buy and said, I need an Android phone for my demo tomorrow. Please help. And they say, oh, we've got the most up-to-date Android phones in the world. Here you go. Perfectly secure. It says it right on the box. Secure Android device. So naturally, being who I am, I look and see what the firmware version is. Android 2.2. So you can certainly say that your Android users in the environment probably do not have the most up-to-date firmware. But let's just say they do. Let's do some hand-waving. Everybody is the most up-to-date version available. Just like with our PCs, well, if they're up-to-date completely on their Windows patches and they're still running IE 7, they all fall down. So, maybe we can hit them this way, through a browser exploit. I have some of those in the framework you can use. And then our social engineering. I think SMS is the new email. And SMS is awesome because even your free email clients, Gmail for instance, take a look in your spam sometimes. There's a lot of people trying to give you money and they want to make certain parts of your anatomy a bit bigger. I wonder if it works, you know? If you could just find the one that does, be rich. But it's all going to your spam filter, right? You're not seeing this unless you're bored at work and have run out of YouTube videos to watch. You've watched everything there is to see. You go to your spam folder and it's like, okay, nice. SMS, unless with some of the newest and greatest and latest mobile spyware, anti-things, antivirus, anti-everything, you can specifically say per number, I don't want to receive messages for them. So this works great for ex-boyfriends, but unfortunately it does not work very well for spammers, because as we will actually see with this framework, I can change my number to whatever I want. So you're blocking one of my numbers, oh, I'll just get another one, especially if you're an iPhone user. So you will receive my spam, and I can tell that to the people who run the spam market. I don't get it. I'm doing something wrong. I read something on the internet that said you can make $100,000 a day building a botnet. I built a botnet. I didn't see any $100,000 a day. But somebody's doing something with this spam thing, and you can send a lot of spam and make lots of money, apparently. So somebody needs to get on this, because I think some of those people giving away all that money would like to think, wow, none of it goes to the spam folder. I can guarantee the users are going to get it. We're starting to see it with things like that Target ad, but I'm thinking it's going to blow up, and people are going to get lots of that stuff. And there's nothing we can do about it. So, will your users click on it? Probably. But why don't we find out? Why don't we know for sure, just like we do with our email phishing? How many people are going to open the website? How many people are just going to download an app? Oh, some of the cell phone carriers are part of the problem. One of my cell phone carriers, which I have many, and I won't name which one it is, but one of our big U.S. carriers, occasionally sends me this text message that says, you're a premium handset subscriber. I'm not exactly sure what that means, for one thing. And you have the right to download this free security app. Whether the security app does anything to make you secure is another story for another day. But this text message actually sends you to a third-party app store where you download an app and it runs. But, I can do that. That's not hard. I can do that with SPF. Set up a nice app download and say, download my security app, premium subscribers. So they're getting it from the carrier. If they believe it from them, they're going to believe it from me too. So will your users fall for this? All right. And then local vulnerability examples. I really think antivirus should catch this stuff. I know antivirus is really bad at catching local privilege escalation, but it's not like it's hard. I just pull the code off the internet, honestly. I don't obfuscate it. And why bother? Nothing catches it. So once I'm on the device, I can just become root. Antivirus should really catch this. What exactly is mobile antivirus doing? I should do a talk on that. It's got to be something. I just can't figure it out yet. Certainly doesn't stop stuff like this. So are the smartphones in your organization vulnerable to local privilege escalation? Yes. If you're running any version of iOS, yes. If you're running any version of Android, yes. The amount of ODAs that are running around there is scary. And then the Android stuff where they don't patch, where I go and buy a brand new phone and they give me Android 2.2. What is wrong with these people? I'm at a loss for words. And then once we're actually on the device, we have a couple ways to get on there. We can either get a command shell, which, Android is just Linux and iOS is just Mac and Windows Mobile is just Windows. So we know how to do command line things there, right? We're really good at that. And unfortunately, so are the attackers. So we can get a command shell on the device and issue all the same commands we're used to. Or we can also do something called an agent, which is not agent deployed from Core Impact, but actually an app-based agent. So getting someone to download an app for me seems to be pretty easy so far. So once I actually have an app on their device, I can do things like remotely control their device, or root it, or gather some information. So what has your device been up to lately? Now I can see. If I'm on the CEO's device, win. All right, enough talk. Let's look at some demos. And I assure you, if something breaks, it's entirely my fault and not SPF's. I have a tendency to fat finger a lot of things, especially when I'm nervous. Not that you guys make me nervous or anything. Just a little. You're a pretty hard crowd to sell. You don't laugh at my jokes. All right, so SPF is actually in Backtrack 5R3. They came out about the same time. So we actually have it already in here. So I have my Backtrack. I'm attached to a wireless access point called Ignatius Riley, which if anybody can figure out why it's named Ignatius Riley, where that came from, I don't know what prize I'm going to give you, but I'll give you a prize, and I'll certainly love you forever at the very least. So if that means anything to you, having my undying love, then woo! Confederacy of Dunces! All right, so my favorite book ever. So I named my access point. It's open, and if you want to attack my iPhone, then you're welcome to do so. My iPhone has had a hard life lately. At the Hope conference, they just wiped it out. The thing wouldn't even turn on anymore. So I had to, restore it. But they were a little trickier at Black Hat. Things seemed to work fine. But every day I was getting these messages, and they were all about Justin Bieber, what Justin Bieber's doing, who he's dating, where he's eating. So I know a lot about Justin Bieber. If you guys are remotely interested in Justin Bieber, come up to me after the talk and I can tell you all about this guy. So, thanks to whoever did that. It was you, Jimmy. I know it. You did it. So, if you guys can do anything better than that, you'll be immortalized in my next talk. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So when I did this at BrewCon, somebody tweeted at me and said, using a smartphone in the workplace is like having an unprotected sex with a stranger. And I thought it was really funny, so there's your visual for the day. All right, so let's actually use SPF. So I'm going to start up framework.perl, which, yes, it's in Perl. I'm sorry, blame my mom. Jerks, making fun of what program language I use. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is clear my database, because every time I demo this, we see all the stuff from the last demo, and we only want to see this demo. Let me make this a little bigger. People being able to see your stuff isn't important. There we go. That's nice and big. All right, so I just told it the number I wanted, so wow, it looks a lot like set. Wonder how that happened. All right, so now let's see, what's the first thing I want to do? Let's run a remote attack. So I'm going to do number 5. Let's do our test for default SSH password. We're going to try, if we have time, to spoof the sender address for iPhone. Since I arrived on site here, though it worked perfectly fine at the hotel that I'm staying at, I cannot get a message to come through to save my life. I can't imagine why the cell towers aren't working here, but we'll see if that works. But let's do one that we know is going to work. So test for default SSH password. So I'm going to do number 1 hit up my iPhone, so now you know how to log into my iPhone. Here's its IP address even. So this is a network-based attack. It's going to try and log into my iPhone with the password Alpine, and if it is successful, it will be able to drop an agent on there as root. Game over. Assuming it's actually on the network. Yes, it gave me a prompt. So this will do a few things. It will either time out, or it will find SSH as it has now, and it will try the password Alpine. And if it is successful, not only will it log in and log that for you for your Pentest report, but if you so choose in your config file, it will drop an agent on that phone as root. Game over. All done. Yay, Pentest is over. All right, let's see what else we can do. All right, I wanted to do this all with live phones, but yeah, that's not working in this environment of bad cell service. So I'm going to pull up one of my emulators, and I'm going to use the Framework Android app, which is my Pentester controlled app that will allow me to attach to SPF. Whoever broke this in Mac, in Android, I hate you. I do not like to have to type like this. It's unfortunate. But somewhere around Mountain Lion, something broke. So I just tell it the IP. What's it doing down there? I need to watch what I'm actually doing when I type. All right. So you can see the user interaction sucking already. But I'm going to tell it where it needs to go, so that would theoretically be some IP address on the internet, not on my local network. Where would I like to have it check in on the server? How about Derbycon? Except I don't think I can type all the way to Derbycon, so I'm just going to say Derby. And then I'm going to give it a control key. We hate to have someone know SPF is in the environment. See, I try and make things secure. I had to have a control key. You guys are so mean, saying that I made the state of security worse by putting, remote code execution in my code. I mean, that's not so bad, right? Oh, it's pretty awful, isn't it? I don't feel bad. Yeah, I do. All right, so I told it where to go, but the first thing I'm going to do is tell SPF that I want to attach to a mobile modem. So number 4, attach to a smartphone-based app, so I can look for an attached modem, or we'll do the smartphone-based app. Tell it the phone number for the database, and that's where I fat finger it and put in too many 5s. If you saw my Black Hat webcast, it was a disaster, all on me. So, give it the same control key and tell it the same path. Say yes, and now we're waiting for the app to check in. Wrong one, there we go. And now they're attached to each other, so I can start using my smartphone here as I choose, and it will still be allowed to use that mobile modem until I tell it to detach. All right, let's start attacking things. So, run a social engineering or client-side attack. You may have heard about this USSD attack that some say means nothing and some says means everything. Well, I don't care whether it means everything or nothing. Probably your clients are going to be like, are we vulnerable to this? Is this going to affect me? Well, we can find out. Let's see. So we have 2 options. We can do the safe attack or the malicious attack. The malicious attack, if you're vulnerable, will wipe out your phone. And the safe attack is the one that people are using online where it just pulls up your IMEI. But the weird thing about it is you may be vulnerable to one and not the other. Like this emulator, for instance, is vulnerable to the safe attack, but whoever wrote the emulator was apparently not as stupid as Samsung and thought, oh, being able to remotely wipe people's devices is a bad idea. So, but it'll let you pull up the IMEI number, so we'll look at that one. All right, so where do I want to put it on my web server? Derby2 works for me. What do I want to call the page? Derby.html. And who do I want to send this to? So I'll send it to my victim emulator. And then the next time we check in, we should get a message. But it may take it a second to check in. One of the things with smartphones, particularly with the Androids, if anybody has an Android, they realize that battery life kind of blows. So we try not to make that worse with SPF, particularly with our victims. So I'll say that, but where is it? Come on. It's only a lie. There we go. Yay. Whew. I feel so much better now. All right. I get nervous, and it's just not coming, and it's not coming. All right. So me, as the victim here on my victim phone, I see this is a cool page. And, of course, I'm going to go to it. I mean, I like to click on links in my phone. So I go to this web page, and it's loading. And then my browser tells me that my IMEI number is, well, I'm an emulator. It's zeros. But you would say that, yes, these devices are indeed vulnerable, the ones that pull this up. So we learned two things. Yes, users will click on links. And yes, they are vulnerable to that USSD attack, which came out like 4 days ago. So give me props for getting it in the framework, okay, guys? God, I love you people. You are my favorite crowd. All right, so let's do another one, shall we? Run a social engineering or client-side attack again. Let's do a client-side shell. So I'm going to attack it with this WebKit vulnerability for Android, since we have Android emulators. Again, where do I want to put it? Derby 3 works for me. What do I want to call it? Derby.html. I don't like to mix things up and my demo stuff starts breaking, because I don't validate my input, remember? All right, so again, I told it where to send that attack. And we have a config file option where we can have this be in the background, but right now, since it's in the foreground, it's just waiting for that shell. So let's see how long it takes for it to get there this time. Don't fail me now, SPF. Well, while we're waiting, so I don't make myself too nervous, here's the SPF web interface, which is all my fault. I'm the one who didn't validate the input, not Mom. She just wrote the pretty stuff. So we can, for instance, see our information gathered so far. Like we ran that Alpine attack, and yes, it worked. Look better when we have an agent. But I think it's really pretty. It can do all of the things that SPF console does. Did I fat finger it? No. 15555. Blah blah. You can't fail me now, SPF. I won't let you. Let's find one that'll work. Let's just kill it and start again. It has to be when the video's on. SPF's afraid of videos, I think. I think it might actually be me, but you never know. The problem with SPF is it usually does so well in demos. If anything ever goes wrong, I get really upset about it. Come on, you can do it. And if you can't, we'll do something else. We've got like 2 minutes. So I guess we're not going to get as far as I thought. Oh well. Why won't you come in? You don't have an excuse. It's a local network. Who's flooding my network? Admit it. Nobody? Somebody. All right. Oh, did it just come in? Did I see it? There it is. All right, there's one. Yay! Woo! SPF works. You can tell I wrote this. All right, so I'm loading up my web page because I'm a user who does that, and it's currently heap spraying my browser into oblivion. But me as an Android user, oh, my browser's hanging. Yeah, that's pretty much every day. So. So I, as a user, am not surprised by this. All right, so while that's trying to crash and give me my shell, there we go. All right, so now we got a shell, and I also have a config option to throw it in the background. So what it did is for the demo is it ran one command and then threw it in the background and logged it as yes, vulnerable. This person is vulnerable to this. So now we have application layer privileges and can continue on from there. One last thing we can do, let's actually attach it to an agent. The first thing I ever wrote in SPF was the agent stuff, which you remember, John Kaiser. So this could be improved. Like, having to tell it all this information is really silly. You should just have it check in and tell me all the information for the database. So this is all going away in the next release, I swear. So I'm going to tell it information about the agent so it can set everything up nicely for me. Like, I even have to tell it what kind of agent it is. That's silly. But I never wrote one for BlackBerry, so. All right, so then I can send commands to the agent. So there's my agent in the database. And here are some things I can do to it. Like, for instance, I can make it take a picture for me. So what do they see? And let's see. I can either control my agents via SMS or HTTP. So let's do HTTP. So even if they're logging everything over the network, we just do everything over SMS and they can't see me. Yay! All right. I just heard it take the picture because I have the sound on. But while we wait for that to hit the database, I don't want to be that guy who takes too long to get off the stage. So even though we started late, let's do the rest of the slides. So future of the project, I want more modules in every category. There's not very many. I need some help from you guys in that because since I started SPF, there's been attacks against smartphones, and there's a lot of old ones. Ultimately, I want everything you can do to a smartphone from an attack perspective, from a payload perspective, from a post-exploitation perspective to be in SPF. I want it to be like Metasploit, except even better. Yeah, well, that's never going to happen. So, and even integrate it with Metasploit and some other tools like I love Set, so why not? I really want to get the community involved. People have started to get involved asking for features. Generally what they say is they want it to be written in Python, but you know, whatever. So if you want to write code for SPF, there's nothing to say you can't write it in Python and I can call it from Perl. You know, really, you don't have to be so mean. And also I want to have more reporting capabilities. Right now we really just have the database spit out stuff, but I hate writing reports and everybody else does too, so more reporting is good. So this is at a contact me. Yeah, I'm Georgia Viteman on Twitter, Georgia at Bulb Security. Bulb Security is my little company place that I started, which is me, my mom, and my dad, and we're the awesomest security company in the world, and you should hire us to do stuff. Like Pentest your smartphones. So let's see if our picture came in. Yep. So now I have a picture on my web server that sees what they see. We could open it up, but since it's an emulator, it only shows an Android, so it's not as exciting. But we have everything we did here, all of our attacks and whether they were successful. So that'll help with some pen testing, I think, at least the nasty reporting part. So, I mean, the last thing is that we can run some of these attacks actually from the phone. So I could, for instance, send a command to an agent and then have it send a command to one of my attached agents. But at this point, let's go ahead and take some questions. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for me? Question right there. So the question is, do I have any iPhone WebKit exploits? I do not currently have any in there, but they are on the list. The goal is to have every exploit that has public exploit code, or even non-public if I can get a hold of it, into SPF. Any other question? Is it possible to deploy a wireless tether when you have root? On the Android, absolutely. On the iPhone, I'd have to check. With Android as root, you can do anything the Android can do. Apple just has to be complicated like that. But I would imagine so. Question right here. So the question is, how do you update the framework? For instance, on Backtrack, we only have the earliest version. I update it about every 2 weeks. The easiest way, this is all open source on GitHub, so if you just pull it down from GitHub, the newest version, actually the script, the Backtrack install script, actually does pull down the newest version, so you could just keep running that. That it's the guy who wrote the Backtrack install script for me actually has it pull down from the GitHub, so you basically just say whatever the request is in Git to pull down. GitHub escapes me. So complicated. All right, any other questions? Question right there. So the question was, what about insert anything I haven't currently included in there? The answer is, I absolutely want everything you can do to any mobile device on here. I've got somebody working on Windows Mobile already, so I don't have one. If you guys are interested in one, just tell me what you want, and I'll put it on the list, and I'll get it done somehow. And the other thing is, if you want to code it yourself, I'd love to have everyone involved. I want to see it become a big community-driven thing. and I'm sure DARPA would too, to say we launched this thing together way back in 2012. And then, the 20-year anniversary of Derbycon, we can come talk about how awesome SPF is now. We took over the whole world. So, any other questions? Question right there in the back. What was that? Am I sure it isn't written for BlackBerry? I know that I turned in a nice report to DARPA outlining all the reasons I didn't feel like spending any more time working on the BlackBerry. It's definitely possible. I honestly feel like I should do some research into BlackBerry because they don't have a very good security posture. I think it's just really, really hard to make anything work. So it's obscurity through beat your head against the wall. All right, they're telling me to get off the stage, so thank you all for coming.